evening, my friend. As you settle in for the night, allow me to take you on a journey through time to an island with a complex and fascinating history. The story of Taiwan, an island nation standing at the crossroads of East Asia, is filled with tales of colonization, conflict, resilience, and transformation. Throughout the centuries, Taiwan has been shaped by various powers and influences, creating a unique identity that continues to evolve today. This small island, once known as Formosa or Beautiful Island to early European explorers, holds a history far greater than its size might suggest, making it an essential story to understand the complexities of East Asian geopolitics and cultural development. Taiwan's story begins thousands of years ago, when the island was first inhabited by Austronesian peoples, the ancestors of today's indigenous Taiwanese. These original settlers established diverse communities across the island, developing unique languages and cultural traditions that would persist for millennia. Archaeological evidence suggests human presence on Taiwan dating back at least 30,000 years, with more established settlements emerging around 6,000 years ago. These indigenous communities lived in relative isolation, developing sophisticated agricultural practices and maritime skills that allowed them to thrive in Taiwan's lush, mountainous environment. Their connection to the land remains an important part of Taiwan's cultural heritage, even as later migrations would dramatically alter the island's demographic makeup. The first significant outside contact came in the 16th century, when Portuguese sailors sighted the island and named it Ilha Formosa, meaning beautiful island. This encounter marked the beginning of European interest in Taiwan, though initial interactions were limited primarily to trading posts along the coast. By the early 17th century, the Dutch East India Company established a colonial presence in southern Taiwan, building Fort Zeelandia as their administrative center in 1624. The Spanish briefly controlled northern Taiwan from 1626 but were expelled by the Dutch in 1642, consolidating European control over the island. During this period, the colonial powers encouraged Chinese immigration from nearby Fujian province to work as laborers and farmers, beginning a demographic shift that would eventually make the Han Chinese a majority population on the island. The Dutch colonial period lasted until 1662, when Zheng Chenggong, also known as Koxinga, a loyalist to the Ming Dynasty, drove out the Dutch and established Chinese rule on Taiwan. Zheng had been fighting against the Qing Dynasty, which had overthrown the Ming Dynasty on mainland China, and established Taiwan as a base for his continuing resistance. This period represented the first formal Chinese administration of Taiwan, though it remained independent from mainland control. Zheng's kingdom lasted only until 1683, when Qing forces finally conquered Taiwan and incorporated it as a prefecture of Fujian province. Under Qing rule, Chinese immigration to Taiwan accelerated, particularly from Fujian and Guangdong provinces, bringing with them their languages, customs, and agricultural techniques that would fundamentally transform Taiwanese society. The island's strategic location in East Asia made it a target for various powers, and as the Qing dynasty weakened in the 19th century, Taiwan once again became vulnerable to outside interference. Following China's defeat in the First Sino-Japanese War, the Treaty of Shimonoseki in 1895 ceded Taiwan to Japan, beginning a 50-year period of Japanese colonial rule. This period would prove transformative for Taiwan, as the Japanese implemented extensive modernization programs, developing the island's infrastructure, education system, agriculture, and industry. Despite the oppressive nature of colonial rule, including policies aimed at assimilating Taiwanese into Japanese culture, this period established foundations that would later contribute to Taiwan's economic development. The Japanese colonial experience would leave lasting marks on Taiwanese society, from architectural influences to cultural practices, creating another layer in Taiwan's complex identity formation. The Japanese colonial period came to an end with Japan's defeat in World War II in 1945. Following Japan's surrender, Taiwan was placed under the administrative control of the Republic of China ROC government, led by Chiang Kai-shek and the Kuomintang KM party. Initially, many Taiwanese welcomed the return to Chinese rule after 50 years of Japanese colonial administration. However, this enthusiasm quickly soured as tensions emerged between the local Taiwanese population and the mainland Chinese who arrived to govern the island. The new administration's corruption, economic mismanagement, and cultural differences created significant friction with the local population, who had developed distinct identities during the Japanese period. These tensions erupted in the tragic February 28th incident of 1947, known locally as 228. What began as a protest against government corruption and police brutality escalated into an island-wide uprising, which was brutally suppressed by KM forces. Thousands of Taiwanese, particularly intellectuals and political leaders, were killed in the subsequent crackdown. This traumatic event marked the beginning of what would come to be known as the White Terror period, during which Taiwan was placed under martial law and political dissent was severely punished. The February 28th incident remains a pivotal moment in Taiwan's collective memory, deepening the divide between those who identified as Taiwanese and those who had arrived from the mainland. In 1949, the Chinese Civil War reached its conclusion. On the mainland, with Mao Zedong's communist forces defeating Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist government, Chiang, along with approximately 2 million soldiers, officials, and civilians, retreated to Taiwan, establishing the island as the last stronghold of the Republic of China. The KM government maintained that it was a legitimate government of all China and would eventually retake the mainland. Meanwhile, the newly established People's Republic of China PRC considered Taiwan a renegade province that would eventually be reunified with the mainland. This created the unusual situation where two governments claimed sovereignty over the entirety of China, a political standoff that would define cross-strait relations for decades to come. Under Chiang Kai-shek's authoritarian leadership, Taiwan experienced both political repression and remarkable economic development. The government implemented land reform policies that redistributed wealth and created a foundation for growth. With significant American aid and support, Taiwan began to industrialize rapidly, eventually becoming one of the four Asian tigers, alongside Hong Kong, Singapore, and South Korea. The government invested heavily in education, infrastructure, and export-oriented industries, laying the groundwork for Taiwan's later economic miracle. Despite the political restrictions of the martial law period, which lasted until 1987, Taiwan's economy transformed from an agricultural society to an industrial powerhouse. Following Chiang Kai-shek's death in 1975, his son Chiang Ching-kuo assumed leadership and eventually began implementing political reforms. By the late 1980s, Taiwan was undergoing a remarkable democratic transition. Martial law was lifted in 1987, opposition political parties were legalized, and press restrictions were eased. Li Tenghui, who succeeded Chiang Ching-kuo after his death in 1988, became Taiwan's first native-born president and accelerated democratic reforms. In 1996, Taiwan held its first direct presidential election, a watershed moment in its democratic development. This political transformation was particularly notable as it occurred peacefully, without the violent upheaval that has characterized democratic transitions in many other countries, earning Taiwan recognition as a model of democratization in East Asia. Taiwan's transformation into a vibrant democracy represents one of the most successful examples of political liberalization in Asia. The island's democratic journey took a significant turn in 2000, when Chen Shui-bian of the Democratic Progressive Party won the presidency, ending more than 5 decades of Kuomintang rule. This peaceful transfer of power demonstrated the maturity of Taiwan's democratic institutions and its commitment to pluralistic governance. Throughout the subsequent decades, Taiwan has continued to strengthen its democratic practices, developing robust civil liberties, freedom of press, and regular competitive elections. This political evolution stands in stark contrast to the authoritarian system maintained across the Taiwan Strait, creating another layer of distinction between Taiwan and mainland China. The economic miracle that transformed Taiwan from an agricultural backwater to a global technological powerhouse deserves closer examination. In the early post-war period, Taiwan focused on labor-intensive industries like textiles and basic manufacturing, utilizing its relatively low-cost workforce. As wages rose through the 1970s and 1982, the government strategically guided the economy toward higher-value industries, implementing policies that encouraged education, research, and technological development. By the 1990s, Taiwan had established itself as a crucial link in the global technology supply chain, particularly in semiconductor manufacturing. Today, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company (TSMC) produces the majority of the world's advanced computer chips, making the island central to global technology infrastructure and geopolitical calculations. Taiwan's unique status in international affairs creates a fascinating case study in diplomacy and national identity. Despite functioning as a de facto independent nation with its own government, military, currency, and foreign relations, Taiwan is recognized as a legitimate government of China by only a small number of countries. The principle of one China dominates international relations, with most nations maintaining unofficial ties with Taiwan while formally recognizing the People's Republic of China. This diplomatic isolation has required Taiwan to develop creative approaches to international engagement, focusing on economic and cultural ties rather than formal recognition. The ambiguity of Taiwan's status remains one of the most delicate balancing acts in global politics, with tremendous implications for regional stability. Beyond politics and economics, Taiwan has developed a rich cultural identity that blends Chinese traditions with Japanese influences, indigenous heritage, and more recent global connections. Taiwanese cuisine offers a perfect example of this cultural fusion, combining techniques and ingredients from multiple traditions into distinctive dishes like beef noodle soup, three-cup chicken, and various night market specialties that attract culinary tourists from around the world. The island's vibrant pop culture industry, including music, film, and television, has gained significant influence throughout East Asia, participating in the broader phenomenon of Asian cultural exports. Literature and arts in Taiwan have flourished under democratic freedoms, often exploring themes of identity, history, and the island's unique position between East and West. Taiwan's indigenous peoples represent another fascinating aspect of the island's history and contemporary society. There are currently 16 officially recognized indigenous tribes in Taiwan, each with distinct languages, customs, and cultural practices. For much of Taiwan's modern history, these communities faced discrimination and policies aimed at forced assimilation. However, recent decades have seen increased recognition of indigenous rights and growing appreciation for their cultural contributions. Many indigenous traditions, particularly music and dance, have become important symbols of Taiwan's cultural distinctiveness. The government has implemented various initiatives to preserve indigenous languages and support economic development in tribal areas. This recognition of Taiwan's multicultural heritage represents an important aspect of the island's evolving identity, acknowledging that Taiwan's story begins long before Chinese or European arrival. The relationship between Taiwan and mainland China remains a central challenge in Taiwan's contemporary politics. Beijing continues to regard Taiwan as a breakaway province that must eventually be reunified with the mainland, while many in Taiwan increasingly view their society as distinct from China, with its own political values and national identity. The Chinese government has not renounced the possibility of using force to achieve reunification, maintaining significant military capabilities focused on Taiwan scenarios. Meanwhile, Taiwan relies on its own defense forces and the strategic ambiguity of American support to maintain its de facto independence. This delicate balance has been maintained for decades, though periods of greater and lesser tension have occurred as leadership and policies have changed on both sides of the Taiwan Strait. Taiwan's global significance extends far beyond its modest size. As a democratic society existing in the shadow of an authoritarian power, Taiwan represents an alternative vision for Chinese political development. Its success challenges the notion that Chinese culture is somehow incompatible with democratic governance or individual rights. Economically, Taiwan's central role in global technology supply chains gives it strategic importance far beyond what its population or geographic size might suggest. The island produces critical components for everything from smartphones to advanced weapons systems, making Taiwan's security a matter of global concern. This technological prominence has become both a source of security and vulnerability, as economic interdependence creates complex incentives for all parties involved in cross-strait relations. Public opinion in Taiwan has shown a gradual but significant shift over recent decades. Polling consistently shows that younger generations are more likely to identify as exclusively Taiwanese rather than Chinese or both Taiwanese and Chinese. This emerging identity is based less on ethnicity and more on shared values, democratic experiences, and distinct historical memory. The question of formal independence versus maintaining the status quo versus potential reunification remains divisive, though most Taiwanese prefer to maintain the current ambiguous situation rather than risk conflict by pushing for formal independence. Taiwan's vibrant civil society includes activist movements advocating for various positions on these issues, demonstrating the pluralistic nature of Taiwan's political landscape and the freedom of expression that citizens enjoy. Taiwan's environmental challenges and responses offer another window into the island's development and values. As a densely populated, industrialized island with limited natural resources, Taiwan has faced significant environmental degradation through its rapid development period. Air and water pollution, waste management issues, and loss of natural habitats created serious public health and ecological concerns by the 1980s and 1996. However, with democratization came increased environmental activism and eventually governmental response. Taiwan has made remarkable progress in addressing these issues, implementing advanced recycling programs, transitioning toward renewable energy, and establishing protected areas to preserve biodiversity. The island's vulnerability to typhoons, earthquakes, and other natural disasters has also shaped Taiwanese society, creating resilient communities and sophisticated disaster response systems that are now models for other nations. As we conclude our journey through Taiwan's remarkable history, we can appreciate how this island nation represents a unique convergence of Eastern and Western influences, traditional and modern values, and authoritarian past and democratic present. Taiwan's story is one of resilience and adaptation, from its indigenous foundations through periods of colonization and dictatorship to its current status as a vibrant democracy and technological powerhouse. The challenges Taiwan faces: maintaining its de facto independence, navigating great power competition, addressing demographic and environmental concerns will require the same resourcefulness and determination that have characterized its past. As global attention increasingly focuses on Taiwan's strategic importance, understanding its complex history becomes essential for comprehending the dynamics of East Asian politics and the future of cross-strait relations. Whatever path Taiwan's journey takes from here, its unique historical experience will continue to shape its approach to the challenges and opportunities ahead.